Hello, my name is Parm King, and I'm the Dungeon Master of a Curse of Strahd campaign called Legends of Barovia. You're looking at a battle map right now on the Foundry system. I believe Foundry is the best virtual tabletop system out there. But today's video is really going to be about Theater of the Mind on a virtual tabletop system. So, RPGs, role playing games, have really two types of gameplay. The first type of gameplay is whether you're on a table with miniatures, or in this case, using a Foundry system and you have your characters as icons on a battle map. This allows your characters to move through different rooms. You have fog of war. It's important for exploration. And of course, those battles in which you're engaging with your enemies or your foes and rolling for combat. And Foundry does an amazing job. The fog of war, the lighting, all the different modules, the music, the engagement with D&D and Pathfinder. It is a phenomenal system. I highly recommend it. But there's another element to gameplay in role playing, and that's theater of the mind. That's the storytelling aspect, and that's really what kind of differentiates role playing from other games is the immersion of the storytelling, interacting as with your characters and the NPCs, and it's a great, amazing part of the story. But there's a particular problem with virtual tabletops. My players actually are from all over the world. I have a player from Germany, Canada, Ireland, London, and Egypt. And there's no way that we're going to be sitting around a table. We're playing, obviously, using the Foundry platform. And my characters have just finished Death House. This is a scene from Death House, part of the Curse of Strahd campaign. I've revamped it to the Count Lugosi's Manor, and they've all left. They're on the road to the village of Barovia. They're actually in the village of the Barovia and they've moved on. However, if I want my players to continue to be able to click on their character and bring up their character sheets and look at their inventory, I have to leave this screen up so they can access their character. So they're really not here any longer in the manor. They're somewhere on the road. And if I turn off this map, the screen goes black, they can't access their characters, and all they're doing is listening to my phenomenal voice tell them a story. So, how can I incorporate theater of the mind into a virtual tabletop system and solve this problem? Well, I believe the old adage, a picture's worth 1,000 words, can solve this fairly simply, easily, and you're going to be, I believe, amazed at how simple this solution is. I like to use a single picture because it provides the players with a common frame of reference. And it saves me, the Dungeon Master, from going through too detailed descriptive narrative, and I can spend more of my time on interactive and action narrative. As an author, we call this show, don't tell. I'd rather spend my time not describing the room, but describing and discussing what's happening in the room, the action, the narrative, the engagement with the players. So let's show you my first theater of the mind battle map. Now, this solves another important problem. The players still want to be able to access their characters, character sheets, and they might want to visualize a scene that they're in. So the first thing is they arrive in the village of Barovia after here being in the manor, and I'm going to bring up the character of the mind map of the village of Barovia here. So here is our village of Barovia, and here's the theater of the mind here for the village. Now, you've got a picture there. You can see if I click on one of the characters, I've put some lighting effects in here, and my characters are all along the bottom here. And I have the picture here. Let's look simply at the walls that I've built here. So using the Foundry system, what I've done is I've just put a solid wall on the outside, and I've put a glass wall here so they can see. And what this does is it prohibits my players from moving anywhere but left and right on the screen. They can't move up or down, but what's amazing about this is if my character needs to access his sheet and his inventory, he can still go through here and access his inventory. He can still see, and I can engage in the storytelling. In this particular case, if you know Village of Barovia, you probably know who this lady is over here. So I'll leave it at that. But they can go to the tavern, and that's exactly what my characters did here is they went to the tavern. So this allows me to tell a story, and all of a sudden my characters are off to the Blood and Vine Tavern, And so we're going to activate that theater of the mind map. And you're going to see this is exactly the same thing. I've created some walls here. I have a wall around the screen, and I have a glass wall here. My characters can't go forward. They can move left and right, and then they can engage with an NPC here. And so we're going to just do that here. I also put some lighting effects in here. I'll just show you that. That's the dynamic lighting. If I click on any one of these, I've added the dancing lights in here and turn them into fires. And so that kind of creates an atmosphere. What you're doing is I'm telling them a story. They're engaging. They got some atmosphere. I've also thrown sound in this. I turned the sound off right now. But yeah, there it is. I don't know if you can hear it, but there's sound going on in the background. A little fire, maybe some noise with some patrons in there. What's interesting in this is I can also include an NPC, and that's what I've done right here. So I have an NPC which they can engage with. Now here's something, you can actually do combat in Theater of the Mind in this instance. So the only difference between the battle map and the Theater of the Mind map in combat is distance. And you just describe distance. Hey, you're 5 feet away, I can use my melee weapon. You're 10, 20 feet away, you can cast your spell, use your ranged weapon. And so just describing your distance is fine. The characters don't need to move, but you can engage in combat really simply. So I can just highlight all these characters. I can right click into combat, and then boom, we're there in combat. We can go ahead and start rolling for initiative, and we can just jump right in and start beginning combat here. I have it set up so the music will start playing, and the characters will start fighting, and there we are. And what's nice is I have the token on here, so when I'm going through combat, each player is getting highlighted as who's next in the combat here. And so you can do an entire combat in Theater of the Mind. It works really well. In fact, on that token, you can play an entire game of Dungeons and Dragons without a battle map and just use these Theater of the Mind maps. And these Theater of the Mind maps are so easy and amazing to build. Take a look again. I just put a line around the box. I put a line around here, drop my characters in here. One little important note that I want to add is I make my square and my grid size really big. If you look at my grid size here, make your grid size big. The characters aren't going to be moving around. They're just going to be moving left and right. So if you want to have your characters really big in here and expand them and make them larger, make a bigger grid. So the grid size here is also an important factor. Just make your grid size big, and everything is going to be super easy. Let me just turn off this combat here. We're going to end combat. Yep. So let's do one more Theater of the Mind map. Actually, I'll do 2 more. So let's say you want to go to a store, a shop, and you're just a shopkeeper. And I have that one right here. I'll just load that up for you. And again, my characters, whoops, that's the Burgermeister's Mansion. Let's go to the shop. Wrong one, sorry about that. So here's the Burgermeister's Meister's location here. And we'll just go in here, and you can see I did another lighting effect here. If we look at the walls again, the walls are the same thing. I just walled it off really simply. The glass wall through the middle. That's this icon right here. They can't move through it, and it's glass, and then the solid walls around the outside. So here's the solid wall here, and this is the glass wall right here. The other thing I do is I play with a module called Loot Sheet, and this makes everything great. You go into the store, you don't have to describe the store. You're in the merchant shop, the merchant's behind the counter. You can go ahead and engage right into your NPC storytelling. And let's say the characters want to buy something. Well, using Loot Sheet, the characters can click on this. This is a unique module called Loot Sheet, and you can set it up for merchant and give the characters permission. And you just load it up, and they can just click on here and buy what they want. You can set the number of inventory. I have 11 candles. You can set the price. And you can create your own merchant, and you don't have to, the characters don't have to be dragging and dropping stuff on the sheets. You don't have to describe what's in the shop. You could just get right into the role-playing, the storytelling, and the characters can go ahead and buy whatever they wish. As long as they have the gold for it, they'll be able to buy it. And again, throwing a little dynamic lighting in there, and you're creating another story. There's one more I'd like to show you, which is an outside one, and that is this one. And I throw these together very quickly. So here's the old Mages Manor. What I did here is, again, I have some fog moving around. You'll see a bird flying by and some little bit of animation in the background. And then I have the old mage up here, which they can go ahead and speak with up here. And in this case, they're interacting outside. So you've created a frame of reference with a single picture. Your player characters approach the old house at the end of the road in which the old mage lives in. There's smoke billowing from the chimney, and there's a light mist in the air, and that's it. They can see it. Every character, every player is seeing the same image. And so that image is now set in all those players' minds, and so you can get right into the action. The characters, while they're here, they can access their sheets, they can go ahead and interact with each other, and so they're still engaged on the Foundry platform, and you're playing in the theater of the mind. Again, if we look at this one, again, I've just created some borders around the outside of it, pretty simple. Make sure the squares are really big, and then you just drag and drop your characters. This is what I call your character bar down here, and this is kind of the theater of the mind stuff where you can put your NPCs and other stuff here. You could play the entire, if you wanted to, you could play the entire Curse of Strahd in the theater of the mind maps. In Foundry, with all these modules, really makes it amazing. You have these interesting modules that you can add in here to give your characters a little bit of effects and special effects as you're telling the story, which I like to do, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, the wizard just appears there in the corner, or maybe there's some lightning up in the sky, you know. So you can have all these interesting effects going on as you're telling the story, and really you're kind of like a director of a play. You have your picture, your characters are there, part of the story, and it's a great way to introduce theater of the mind for virtual role playing, and not always having to use a battle map. There's so many instances where you just don't need a battle map. You're inside a pub, you're inside a shop, you're on the road engaging with somebody, and there's some great artwork out there for Curse of Strahd. One of them that I happen to use, and I'll just bring it up here for you, is this one here. I'm a patron of his, but he's created some amazing background for Curse of Strahd, and that's James RPG art. And so some of these are all animated, and you just throw them in there. You've got an animated map, and the characters are now engaging in the story. So that's it for me. It's Theater of the Mind maps on the Foundry virtual tabletop system. Use those in your story. I'd like to hear what you did, and maybe give me some screenshots or tell me how you did it, or any great ideas that you have. But this, for me, I think really makes my life simple as a dungeon master, but also allows my players to stay engaged. There's some excellent benefits from using this. It's simple to make. It creates a single image and frame of reference for your players. The characters can continue to interact with their character sheets, or if you create a shopkeeper, they can interact with the shopkeeper. And it keeps everybody engaged. There's no black screen. It's just not the sound of my voice anymore. So please like this video if you like my idea. Please leave comments below. If you're interested in my Curse of Strahd campaign, Legends of Barovia, the session recaps are in there, including the character backstories. Thanks again, and enjoy your next D&D campaign.